My name is Layla. I'm 28 years old, an elementary school teacher in a small coastal town in Oregon. I've been in this job for almost 5 years, love my students with all my heart, and everyone in the community knows me as a gentle, simple girl. Yet, outside the classroom, I also have my own life entering a stage that everyone thinks is perfect. I'm about to become a bride. The man I'm going to marry is Ethan, 30 years old. He works in his family's interior design company in the city center. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a confident smile and sharp blue eyes, he easily wins everyone's favor. For the past 4 years, we've been in love, and after a year engaged, the wedding was set for mid-July, a beautiful summer. Whoever hears the news says I'm lucky, because Ethan isn't just handsome but also comes from a well-off, respected family in the area. My maid of honor is Harper, my best friend since high school. We grew up in the same neighborhood, sharing clothes, pulling all-nighters for exams, crying together when I lost my grandfather, and laughing uncontrollably at little things. Harper stands out anywhere she goes, her natural curly blonde hair, radiant smile, and presence that turns heads. But to me, she isn't just the dazzling friend, she's like a sister. When Ethan proposed, the first person I called was Harper. She screamed over the phone, "Oh my God, Layla, it's finally happening. Your wedding will be the most beautiful event this town has ever seen." Harper threw herself into every detail of planning, flowers, cakes, dress fittings, even organizing the guest list. Outsiders might think it was her own wedding because of how invested she was. I could only smile, feeling grateful to have such a devoted friend beside me. My family was overjoyed too. My mother, Helen, teared up every time she looked at my wedding gown hanging in the living room, whispering she never thought the day her daughter walked down the aisle would come so soon. My father, Robert, secretly practiced his father of the bride speech in front of the mirror, thinking no one noticed, though I heard him mumbling for many nights. My younger brother, Lucas, 22, boasted to his friends that he would get to wear a sharp suit and walk beside his sister on her big day. Even distant relatives arranged to come. Aunt Margaret, 80 years old, who lives in Arizona, flew in a week early. She had been married for over half a century before her husband passed, but she remained the strongest, wisest woman I've ever known. The night before the wedding, she held my hand and whispered, "Layla, marriage isn't just roses and confetti. It's a long journey that requires patience and faith. You must be sure the man you choose will always choose you, even when hardship strikes." I nodded with full trust, because in my heart I never once doubted Ethan. Honestly, I thought I had it all. A stable job, a loving family, a man everyone praised, and a best friend always by my side. Many parents of my students stopped me after class, smiling as they teased, "Layla, you're so lucky. Ethan is a golden groom, and that ring on your hand, it's beautiful. He truly is a responsible man." I smiled at their words, filled with pride. Whenever I looked in the mirror at the engagement ring Ethan had saved for half a year to buy, I was even more certain I had chosen the right man. We weren't the wealthiest couple, but everyone saw us as the golden pair of the town. In everyone's eyes, I was the girl about to step into a perfectly happy life. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, my life was swept into a whirlwind of preparations. My teaching schedule was already packed, yet every afternoon I still spent hours rushing from the flower shop to the bakery, then stopping by the reception hall to check on progress. Harper was always with me, like a professional event planner. She was so enthusiastic it sometimes made me laugh. At the florist, while I was still debating between hydrangeas or peonies, Harper quickly called over the clerk, "Make a bouquet mixing both white and light pink. It has to be elegant. Our bride deserves perfection." Hearing that made my heart sink with emotion, partly because I felt cherished, partly because I never imagined my best friend could be so meticulous. The cake tasting was another memory I'll never forget. The baker brought out 4 flavors, from chocolate and vanilla to strawberry. I was easygoing, thinking they all tasted fine, but Harper insisted, "We have to pick a flavor guests will remember." "Layla, this isn't just a wedding. This is the event the whole town will talk about." I laughed, but in the end I let her lead, choosing a chocolate and passion fruit combination, something I'd never even considered before. Ethan was less involved in the details, but every time he showed up, I felt reassured. He would smile, wrap his arm around me in front of everyone, and say, "Whatever you and Harper decide, I just need to see you happy." That easygoing attitude made me feel so lucky. More than once, I overheard neighbors whispering, "Layla really found the perfect man. Ethan is successful and knows how to treat his fiancée right." Those words filled me with both pride and peace. Our families followed every step as well. My mother often brought dinner to the hall when she saw Harper and me working late into the night. Setting down the tray, she smiled. "My daughter is about to be a bride. Don't wear yourself out. You have an entire community behind you." My father, meanwhile, focused on what seemed like minor details. He inspected every chair in the hall, reminding staff to make sure none were loose. My younger brother Lucas constantly snapped behind-the-scenes photos, bragging to friends that he was part of the biggest wedding of the summer. I remember one rainy evening, the three of us, me, Harper, and Ethan, sat in the living room. Harper spread out a pile of bridal magazines, pointing at each page, debating whether to choose live music or a DJ. Ethan slipped his arm around me and smiled. "As long as Layla likes it, I agree with everything." Harper immediately cut in. "No, we need to make a statement. This wedding should have the whole town talking." I laughed, feeling warm inside at the thought of having my two closest people by my side. At the beach photo shoot, the wind was so strong it tangled my hair. I worried I looked a mess, but Ethan stood behind me, fixing my veil, gently saying, "You're always beautiful to me." The photographer captured that moment perfectly, and when I saw the picture, I could clearly see the happiness on my face. Harper stood nearby, cheering loudly, even running onto the sand to adjust my dress. "This photo has to be enlarged and displayed right at the entrance of the wedding," she declared. At school, parents and colleagues constantly brought up the upcoming wedding. Some even joked, "The whole town is waiting for the day Layla becomes a bride. It'll be the biggest event of the year." Those words made me proud, but also placed a sweet pressure on my shoulders. I told myself, I have to look radiant, not just for me, but for everyone who believes in this love. I can still recall Aunt Margaret's gaze the final night before she flew home for a short rest, promising to return on the wedding day. She looked at me intently and said, "Layla, marriage isn't just about wearing a white dress, it's a lifetime. Remember, the most important thing isn't the party, it's whether your partner is truly worthy." I squeezed her hand, my heart swelling with conviction. I believed Ethan was the man I could trust forever. And yet, amid all the admiration and blessings, there were fleeting moments when I caught Harper looking at me and Ethan with a strange expression, gone as quickly as a blink. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just exhaustion after endless preparations. After all, Harper had always been by my side, involved in every detail. I had no reason to doubt her. That morning, I woke up in my old bedroom at my parents' house, keeping with tradition. Summer sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting glowing streaks on the wall. My heart beat faster than usual, a mix of nerves and excitement. Today was the day Ethan and I would walk down the aisle. The house downstairs was already buzzing. I heard my mother clattering in the kitchen, probably preparing extra food for guests. My father was on the phone, his stern voice like he was handling an urgent matter. Lucas, my younger brother, was singing off-key in the shower, making me laugh despite my tense nerves. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Good morning, beautiful bride-to-be. I can't wait to see you at the altar. I love you." I smiled softly, typing back, "I love you too. See you at the ceremony." My faith in him felt even stronger. Another text came from Harper. Layla, the big day is here. I'm getting my hair done now, then I'll be right over. Trust me, everything will be perfect. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for the whirlwind ahead. By late morning, the makeup artist, photographer, and bridesmaids were bustling in and out. My pristine white dress was handled carefully, the bouquets were delivered fresh and bright. When I slipped into the gown, my mother couldn't hold back tears. My daughter looks absolutely radiant. I looked at myself in the mirror, my heart racing, believing that in just a few hours, all my dreams would come true. The bridal car rolled toward the venue. The decorations were flawless, white roses lining the aisle, pale blue ribbons fluttering in the breeze, the band rehearsing their opening notes. I nearly choked up at the sight. Harper squeezed my hand, smiling brightly. "This is exactly the wedding you dreamed of." I believed her, with no trace of doubt. But by 1:30 p.m., when guests were already seated, word came that Ethan still hadn't arrived. The wedding coordinator, Mrs. Linda, leaned close and whispered, "He's probably stuck in a little traffic. No worries, we'll delay 15 minutes. I nodded, trying to smother the unease rising in my chest. Ethan was always punctual. This was strange. I called his phone only to hear voicemail. I texted him, but no reply. My heartbeat quickened. I looked around for Harper, but she had disappeared after saying she was checking the entrance flowers. I called her too, still nothing but silence. By 2 o'clock sharp, Linda returned, her face more tense. "Layla, the groom still hasn't shown. His phone won't connect." The room chilled instantly. My mother trembled, clutching tissues. My father's jaw clenched so tightly I could see the veins rise. Lucas kept redialing Ethan's number with no luck. From outside, I heard the guests murmuring, confusion spreading. What's happening? I fought to stay calm, but inside it felt like 1,000 needles stabbing. A thought flashed, making my stomach drop. Ethan and Harper were both missing at the same time. No, I refused to believe it. I forced myself to swallow the fear, but the silence from the two people closest to me screamed a truth I wasn't ready to face. "We have to go find them," I whispered, my voice shaky but firm. My father turned to me, his eyes heavy. "Are you sure, Layla? Maybe this is just a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "Number. I need to know what's going on." The first place that came to mind was the Riverside Hotel, where Ethan had booked a room the night before to honor the tradition of not seeing the bride. I gathered my dress, gripped my mother's hand tightly, and rushed to the car. Lucas sat up front, dialing Ethan over and over in vain. Aunt Margaret insisted on joining too, her frail hand resting firmly on my shoulder. "You don't face this alone." The car sped down familiar streets, but every turn felt suffocating that day. My heart pounded, sweat prickled beneath the heavy layers of my wedding gown. I told myself maybe Ethan had a minor accident, maybe Harper was caught up in something urgent. But the more I tried to reassure myself, the darker my gut feeling grew. I didn't know what waited behind that door. I only knew that whatever the truth was, no matter how cruel, it had to be uncovered. As the hotel came into view, a cold chill swept over me. The lobby was eerily quiet that day. When I stepped inside in my pure white wedding gown, every gaze turned toward me. The elderly desk clerk looked at me with both curiosity and pity. My voice trembled as I asked for Ethan's room number. She hesitated a moment, then handed me a spare key card, her voice dropping. "Room 214, elevator on the left." The words pierced my chest like a blade. My whole family followed in silence. My father's face burned red with rage. My mother shook so hard she couldn't speak. Lucas clutched his phone tightly, his eyes seething with hatred. Aunt Margaret placed her frail hand on my shoulder, steadying me so I wouldn't collapse. The long hallway stretched out, blue carpet muffling each step that felt twice as heavy as normal. The sound of our shoes echoed against the walls, blending with my frantic heartbeat. When I stopped at the wooden door marked 214, I froze. From inside came faint noises, the unmistakable sound of shifting sheets. I looked at my father. He nodded, signaling that I had every right to open the door and face the truth. I bit my lip, slid the key into the slot, and pushed the door open. The room was dim, curtains pulled tight, only a weak yellow glow from the bedside lamp. My eyes adjusted for a second, and then I froze completely. On the wide bed lay Ethan and Harper, naked, tangled together like lovers long accustomed to each other. Harper's mint green bridesmaid dress was thrown carelessly over a chair. Ethan's suit, the one he was supposed to wear to the altar, lay crumpled and filthy on the floor. An open bottle of champagne sat on the nightstand, glasses tipped and rolling. It felt like the air was sucked from my lungs. My feet rooted to the carpet, my heart pounding so violently my ears rang. Everything was sharp yet surreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Behind me, I heard my mother's strangled sob, my father curse under his breath. Lucas slam his fist against the wall, while Aunt Margaret whispered, "Layla, enough. Step back." But I didn't move. I stood there, staring, forcing the image into memory so there'd be no excuses left. Harper shifted, her blonde hair spilling across Ethan's chest. The intimacy of it was the final blade cutting away any last shred of trust I'd held. The sound of the door startled Ethan awake. His eyes opened, met mine, and his face drained of all color. He scrambled upright, fumbling with the sheet. "Layla, I can explain." Harper jolted awake too. The moment she saw me, she yanked the blanket over herself, stammering, "Layla, please listen, it's not what you think." I laughed, but it cracked apart like shattered glass. My voice sliced coldly through the air. "Not what I think? Then what am I seeing? My groom and my maid of honor naked in a hotel room at the exact hour of my wedding. Do you expect me to believe this is some accident?" No one answered. Ethan hung his head, hands shaking as he searched for clothes. Harper sobbed, but didn't dare come near me. My father growled, "You disgrace my daughter on her wedding day, Ethan? And you, Harper, this is what decades of friendship mean to you?" I raised my hand to stop him. I wanted to speak for myself. I drew in a long breath, forcing calm. "I don't need protection. I need the truth." "How long? How long have you been sneaking behind my back?" Ethan stammered. Just recently, I made a mistake." Harper choked out, "Layla, I'm sorry. I lost control." My voice broke into a scream, tears spilling. Lost control? All those days we chose flowers, tried on dresses, wrote invitations, you smiled at me, hugged me, told me I deserved happiness while you were betraying me behind my back. The air grew heavy, every breath suffocating. I turned to Aunt Margaret. She didn't speak, only nodded slowly. Her eyes said clearly, "You know what you must do." I wiped my tears, clenched my fists. I would not run. I would not collapse. I would face them head on. The evidence was all around me. The crumpled suit on the floor, the ruined bridesmaid dress, the champagne bottle, and the two traitors. I would not allow this story to be buried under their cheap excuses. I stood tall and drew in a deep breath. The ache in my chest hadn't faded, but my anger had hardened into strength that kept me from collapsing. Ethan fumbled into a wrinkled shirt, trembling, while Harper wrapped the bedsheet around herself, her face drained of color. They muttered under their breath, "Layla, let me explain. It was just a momentary mistake." "No. Listen to me, Layla. I didn't mean to, I really didn't." I cut them off, my voice sharp as steel. "Be quiet. I don't want to hear another excuse. You betrayed me, and you betrayed my family. Today I won't face this truth alone. Everyone will see your real faces." Ethan's face paled. "You can't do this, Layla. You'll bring shame to both our families." I locked eyes with him and replied firmly, "I'm not the one bringing shame. You did this yourselves." I pulled out my phone and dialed directly to Mrs. Linda, the wedding coordinator. Mrs. Linda, please bring the groom's family, the best man, and a few close relatives to room 214. They need to witness this immediately." There was silence on the line, then her quiet reply. "Layla, what's going on? You'll see when you get here." I hung up before she could ask more. Ethan lunged, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. My father stepped forward, his solid grip forcing him back. "Enough, Ethan. My daughter won't cover for your sins." My mother collapsed into a chair, shoulders trembling, but managed to speak each word clearly. "Layla, I support you. No one is allowed to humiliate my daughter like this." "Lucas," my brother growled, "everyone needs to see this with their own eyes. We can't let them go back to the wedding and pretend nothing happened." About 15 minutes later, heavy knocks pounded on the door. I opened it. Outside stood Ethan's parents, his younger sister Claire, and the best man, Brandon. Mrs. Linda was with them, her face tight with unease. "Why did you call us up here?" Raymond, Ethan's father, demanded. I stepped aside, my tone steady but firm. "Come in. I want you to see the truth for yourselves, not hear it through gossip." The room grew stifling as everyone saw Harper clutching the sheet, eyes swollen, and Ethan fumbling with his zipper. For several seconds, there was only the sound of harsh breathing. Mrs. Linda almost choked. "Oh my God, Ethan, Harper, what did you—" Brandon, the best man, shouted furiously. "Ethan, what were you thinking? This is your wedding day." Claire burst into tears. "What have you done? Do you realize what you've put Layla through?" Ethan's father scowled darkly, while his mother covered her mouth, sobbing. Ethan stammered, "You're misunderstanding. We just drank too much, lost control. There are no feelings here, it was just a weak mistake." Harper nodded rapidly, adding, "Layla, I swear I still care for you like a sister. This was a terrible lapse, but only once." I let out a bitter laugh, sweeping my gaze across them. "Only once? What about that bridesmaid dress tossed in the corner, the groom's suit crumpled on the floor, the open champagne bottle? You call that an accident? And who can guarantee this is the first time?" Mrs. Linda lowered her head, sighing heavily. "Layla, I'm truly sorry. But you're right, the truth has to come out." I turned to the whole room, my voice steady. "I don't want pity. I want this truth brought before every guest. I will not walk down the aisle with a traitor, nor let another continue wearing the mask of my best friend." Ethan lunged forward, grabbing my hand. "Layla, don't do this. I'm sorry. I promise I'll change. We can postpone the wedding, explain everything." I yanked my hand free, my voice icy. "No, Ethan. I don't need empty promises. I need respect, and you trampled it in the worst way." The air thickened. Every eye in the room turned on Ethan and Harper with fury. Mrs. Linda finally spoke, her tone resolute. "We'll return to the venue right now. The guests must know why this wedding cannot go on. Layla, I'll make the arrangements." I nodded, my hands trembling but my gaze unwavering. In that moment, I knew one thing clearly. This humiliation was not mine alone to bear. It would become proof for everyone to see the truth those two had tried to bury. When we left the hotel, my wedding gown weighed heavy in the summer wind, and it felt like I was carrying a boulder on my chest. Ethan and Harper trailed behind, their faces ashen, avoiding every glance. My father drove in silence, like a mountain on the edge of erupting. My mother sat beside me, her eyes red and swollen, gripping my hand to lend me strength. Aunt Margaret sat behind, gently patting my shoulder now and then. Not a word was spoken, but the silence was heavier than any shouting could be. When our car pulled up to the venue, the band was still playing prelude music. Guests murmured, some even stood to leave from impatience. The sight of pristine white flowers, lace-covered tables, and a 5-tiered cake, glittering under the lights, looked less like a wedding and more like a stage set for a bitter play. Mrs. Linda, the coordinator, rushed over when she saw me, Her face was a mix of worry and pity. I spoke briefly. Gather everyone. I have something to say. Within 10 minutes, nearly 200 guests filled the seats. Whispers rippled through the garden. What's going on? Why hasn't it started yet? Where's the groom? I inhaled deeply, stepping onto the wooden platform built for the ceremony. My white heels clicked softly on the boards, and as I stood before the microphone, the entire place fell silent. I looked out at the sea of faces, teachers, neighbors, old college friends all watching, waiting. Ethan and Harper stood in the corner, drained of all color. My voice rang out, shaky at first but gaining strength. Thank you all for being here today. I know everyone came expecting a joyful wedding, but there will be no wedding. Not because I changed my mind, or because of some minor mishap. The reason is, I discovered that my groom and my maid of honor, the two people I trusted most, have been betraying me for months. A wave of shock tore through the crowd. Some gasped, others shook their heads in disgust. I raised my hand, silencing them. I caught them together in a hotel room while you all sat waiting here. The groom's suit was tossed on the floor. The bridesmaid's dress was there too, and they didn't look the least bit remorseful until they were caught. Ethan stepped forward, trying to speak. Layla, please, don't turn something private into a spectacle for the whole town. I snapped back, my voice sharp as a blade. Private? When you left 100 people sitting here while you were in bed with my best friend? This is no longer private, Ethan. This is the truth everyone deserves to hear. Harper burst into tears, covering her face with shaking hands. But I refused to let her tears weaken my time. Resolve, I continued, locking eyes with the crowd. I'm not sharing this to ask for pity. I'm sharing it to prove that betrayal can happen even in the relationships we believe are strongest. And I will not close my eyes and step into a marriage built on lies. I choose to stop this today, here, before all of you. I pulled off my engagement ring, the symbol of a promise I once felt proud of. Holding it for a moment, my chest ached, but I clenched my fist and declared, "This ring once stood for love and commitment. Now it's only proof of betrayal. I don't need it anymore." I hurled the ring into the garden's pond. The splash echoed, ripples spreading across the surface, carrying away every illusion I once clung to. The crowd froze. Some wept in sympathy, others stood and applauded. A voice shouted from the back, "You did the right thing, Layla." Soon, cheers and clapping filled the air. I lifted my head high. For the first time in months, I felt truly free. Ethan stood frozen, his face burning with shame. Harper collapsed into a chair, burying her head in her hands. Both families stared at them with crushing disappointment. I ended with a steady voice. I may have lost a man and a friend, but I still have my dignity and my self-respect. And that is worth more than anything. Thunderous applause rose, drowning out every whisper. I turned, stepped down from the platform one step at a time. My stride no longer trembled, it was proud and resolute. In that moment, I knew my story had only just begun, and it would be written by my own hands, no longer shaped by anyone's betrayal. The sound of the ring hitting the pond still echoed in my mind, but instead of drowning in humiliation, I felt lighter than ever. I took a deep breath and turned to face the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, clear and firm, "this wedding is over, but I refuse to let their betrayal turn today into tragedy. We have cake, music, food, and joy prepared. Instead of a wedding, let this be my freedom celebration." There was a beat of silence, then the garden erupted in applause and cheers. A few guests stood with their glasses raised, shouting, "That's right, a toast to Layla." No one blamed me, no one left. They looked at me with admiration, as though I had done something many only wished they had the courage to do. The band, confused at first, quickly shifted to an upbeat song after a few older guests motioned. The lively notes spread through the garden that had been decorated to bless a couple. now transformed into a stage honoring one woman's resilience. Ethan froze, his face flushed crimson. He muttered, "Let's go, Harper." As they walked down the aisle, hundreds of eyes pierced them like blades. Some guests shook their heads in disgust. Others whispered sharply, and one voice cut loud, "They're the shame of this town." Harper hung her head, tears streaming, clutching Ethan's hand. But even he had lost his usual hollow confidence. They hurried past the crowd, no one stopping them, yet no one sparing them from the scornful stares. They left in silence, trailed by a storm of anger and contempt. Ethan's mother quietly approached me, her eyes red. "Layla, dear, I'm so sorry. I never imagined my son could stoop so low." "You didn't deserve this." I nodded gently, replying calmly, "You don't need to apologize. This was their choice, not yours." Ethan's father stood a few steps back, his head bowed, shoulders sagging under the weight of shame. They left soon after, burdened by disgrace. What remained were me and the guests. Aunt Margaret raised her champagne glass high and declared, "Today, we did not just witness a bride betrayed, we witnessed a woman who stood tall and refused to bow. Raise your glasses to Layla for her strength and her freedom." Cheers erupted once more. Guests ate, danced, and turned the would-be wedding into a vibrant celebration. I was no longer the abandoned bride, but the center of admiration. Friends hugged me tightly, praising my courage. Colleagues said they'd share my story with their students as a lesson in bravery. Lucas, my brother, even climbed onto a chair and shouted, "See this? My sister turned betrayal into freedom. She doesn't need a lying man to shine." The crowd roared in applause, laughter echoing through the night. I sat at a long table where my parents waited. My mother wiped her tears, squeezing my hand. "You made me proud. You refused to let them bury you in shame." My father nodded, his stern eyes glinting with pride. "You proved yourself stronger than all of it." Throughout the evening, I heard countless words of support. An elderly neighbor told me, "Layla, you just taught this whole town a lesson. Better to be alone than live with lies." A colleague whispered, "I once ignored betrayal and regretted it for years. I wish I had your courage." As the sun set and orange light washed over the garden, I danced with friends, laughing freely, no weight left on my shoulders. The wedding didn't happen, but a celebration of freedom took place, and I was the guest of honor. That night, after everyone left, I stood alone by the pond where the ring had sunk. The water reflected the moon, rippling softly like it whispered back to me. I smiled, realizing that from the moment I threw that ring, I was no longer a victim. I had turned pain into strength and begun a brand new chapter of my life. After that strange freedom celebration, my life turned to a brand new chapter. I packed up the small apartment I once shared with Ethan, boxed every memory, and shoved them deep into the past. I chose a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Denver, filled with morning light and a balcony overlooking the park. It wasn't big, but every wall, every chair was mine. No one could erase my mark on it. A new home brought new changes in work. I had been an elementary school teacher, but after the collapse of my wedding, I poured myself into growth. I took advanced training, applied for a program coordinator role, and just months later, the principal officially promoted me to lead the teaching team. Standing at the podium presenting curriculum reforms, I saw respect in my colleagues' eyes. I was no longer the gentle, fragile Layla. I had become Layla with strength and a voice. At the same time, I began volunteering at the local community center. There, I met women who had also walked away from toxic relationships. They carried fresh wounds like I once had. I listened, shared my own story, and together, we lifted one another. Many told me my journey gave them hope, but truly, they became my inspiration to keep going. Then came David. He managed the coffee shop I often stopped at after school. We met through short chats as I waited for my morning latte. David wasn't flashy or boastful. He was simply genuine, listening fully to every word I shared. One evening, after I told him about teaching underprivileged kids at the center, he smiled. Layla, you don't realize how strong you are. A woman like you deserves someone who cherishes every effort, every dream. His words made my heart tremble. I thought I'd never trust a man again, but David was different. He didn't rush me, didn't push, he simply stayed. We began weekend walks, talking about books, movies, and little plans for the future. I realized true happiness doesn't come from glamour, but from peace beside someone who makes you feel complete. A year after the betrayal, I stood on stage receiving the Outstanding Teacher of the District award. As the applause thundered, I smiled, remembering the day I threw the ring into the pond. Without that moment, I might still be trapped in a false marriage. Instead of crumbling, I chose myself and gained far more than I ever imagined. I learned that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's the foundation of a meaningful life. I learned that no one else has the right to define my worth. And most of all, I learned happiness isn't about being chosen by someone else, it's about choosing yourself and refusing anything less than what you deserve. One autumn afternoon, sitting by that same pond with David, the place I'd cast away the ring, he asked softly, "Do you regret it all, Layla?" I watched the sunlight shimmer on the water and smiled. Number, because that was the day I truly began living. I know my journey will continue, with trials and pain ahead. But now I have the strength to face them. I am no longer the abandoned bride, but the woman who stood, took back her fate, and walked into the future with her own hands and heart. And I've made a promise. From this day forward, Layla will never accept less than what she deserves. Layla's story reminds me that sometimes the greatest shock becomes the turning point for true growth. From a bride who seemed broken on her wedding day, she stood up and exposed the truth, turning pain into strength to begin anew. In real life, anyone can face betrayal or disappointment, but it's how we choose afterward that defines our worth. Instead of clinging to lies, we must be brave enough to choose ourselves because real happiness comes only when we know we deserve better. What do you think about Layla's journey from a betrayed bride to a woman who reclaimed her strength and freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories to come.